The sun was setting over the bustling spaceport city of Valora, casting long shadows across the crowded streets. Kaimin wiped his hands on a greasy rag and leaned back against the wall of his small workshop. His day had been filled with fixing broken starships and repairing robotic companions for travelers passing through the city. It wasn't an exciting life, but it was steady, and Kaimin liked it that way. He didn't crave adventure or fame. He just wanted to keep his head down and do what he did best. That evening, as Kaimin closed up shop, a young woman stumbled into his workshop, her face pale and her breath coming in short gasps. She looked around nervously before locking the door behind her. Startled, Kaimin stood up from his workbench. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. "My name is Yun-Su," she said quickly, glancing at the windows as if expecting someone or something to burst in at any moment. "I need your help. They're after me." Kaimin frowned. "Who's after you?" "Queen Myung-ai's soldiers," Yun-Su replied, her voice trembling. "They'll kill me if they catch me." Kaimin hesitated. Getting involved with the Queen's forces was dangerous business. Princess Queen Myung-ai ruled Valora with an iron fist, and anyone who crossed her rarely lived to tell the tale. Still, something about Yun-Su's desperation tugged at him. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, and there was a wild look in her eyes that told him she wasn't lying. Before he could respond, the sound of heavy boots echoed outside. Yun-Su froze, her eyes wide with panic. "Please," she whispered. "You have to hide me." Without another word, Kaimin grabbed her arm and pulled her behind a stack of crates in the corner of the workshop. Moments later, the door burst open, and 3 armored soldiers stormed in, their weapons drawn. They scanned the room, their helmets hiding their faces. "Where is she?" one of them barked, pointing his rifle at Kaimin. "I don't know who you're talking about," Kaimin said, keeping his tone neutral. He gestured toward the half-finished droid on his workbench. "I've been working here all day." The soldier narrowed his eyes but didn't press further. After a tense moment, they left, slamming the door shut behind them. Kaimin waited until their footsteps faded before turning to Yun-Su. "You'd better start explaining," he said. Yun-Su took a deep breath and began to speak. She told him about the rebellion, a group of fighters trying to overthrow Queen Myung-ai's oppressive regime. She explained that she had stolen vital information about the Queen's secret weapon, a devastating piece of technology capable of wiping out entire cities. The soldiers were hunting her because of what she knew. Kaimin listened silently, his mind racing. He wasn't a fighter or a hero. He was just a mechanic. But as he looked at Yun-Su's frightened face, he realized he couldn't turn her away. "All right," he said finally, "I'll help you." Using his knowledge of the city's underground tunnels, Kaimin led Yun-Su to an old hovercraft hidden in a nearby alley. As they climbed aboard, he noticed a strange symbol etched into the side. A dragon coiled around a star. It reminded him of the toy he'd fixed earlier that day, the one that had seemed so ordinary at the time. The hovercraft roared to life, and they sped off into the night, leaving the city behind. Neither of them noticed the tiny red light blinking on the dashboard, a signal that their escape had not gone unnoticed. As they traveled deeper into the wilderness, Yun-Su began to relax slightly. She glanced at Kaimin, who was focused on navigating the rocky terrain. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. "You barely know me." Kaimin shrugged. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said simply. "Besides, I've always hated bullies." Yun-Su smiled faintly, but her expression quickly turned serious. "This isn't over," she warned. "The Queen won't stop until she finds me, and when she does—" She trailed off, leaving the thought unfinished. Kaimin didn't respond. He already knew the stakes. What he didn't know was how far this journey would take him, or how much it would change him. For now, though, all he could do was keep moving forward. one step at a time. The hovercraft hummed steadily as it glided over the rugged terrain, its headlights cutting through the thick mist that blanketed the wilderness. Kaimin gripped the controls tightly, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. Behind him, Yunsu sat quietly, her arms wrapped around herself as if trying to ward off the chill in the air. Neither of them spoke much. There was too much tension hanging between them, too many questions left unanswered. After hours of travel, they finally reached a narrow canyon flanked by towering cliffs. The path ahead was barely wide enough for the hovercraft to pass through, but Yunsu assured Kaimin that this was the safest route to their destination, the rebel base hidden deep within the crystal caverns. "We're close," she said softly, though her voice carried a note of unease. "But we need to be careful. This area is crawling with predators." Kaimin nodded, his focus sharp as he maneuvered the vehicle through the treacherous passage. The canyon walls loomed above them, casting long shadows that made it hard to see clearly. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the silence, sending shivers down their spines. From the darkness emerged a pack of sleek, wolf-like creatures with glowing eyes and razor-sharp teeth. They circled the hovercraft, snarling and snapping at the air. "Hold on," Kaimin muttered under his breath. He pressed a button on the dashboard, activating a set of retractable blades along the sides of the hovercraft. As the creatures lunged forward, the blades sliced through the air, forcing them to retreat. But the wolves weren't giving up so easily. One of them leapt onto the hood, its claws scraping against the metal surface. Thinking quickly, Kaimin grabbed a piece of scrap metal from the back seat and fashioned it into a makeshift spear, using tools from his repair kit. With steady hands, he thrust the spear out the window, startling the creature enough to make it jump away. The rest of the pack hesitated before slinking back into the shadows, their glowing eyes disappearing one by one. "That was impressive," Yunsu said, her voice tinged with admiration. "You really know how to handle yourself." "I just do what I have to," Kaimin replied modestly, although a hint of pride flickered in his eyes. He didn't consider himself brave or heroic. He was simply resourceful, a trait honed from years of fixing things with limited resources. Still, he couldn't deny that surviving encounters like this gave him a strange sense of satisfaction. As they continued their journey, the landscape grew more surreal. Jagged rock formations jutted out of the ground like broken teeth, and streams of bioluminescent water shimmered in the moonlight. Eventually, they arrived at the entrance to the crystal caverns, a massive opening carved into the side of a mountain, its interior glittering with veins of luminous crystal. Inside, the caverns were vast and labyrinthine, their walls pulsating with soft, otherworldly light. It wasn't long before they encountered the first signs of life. Automated defense systems left behind by an ancient civilization. Laser turrets lined the corridors, their sensors scanning for intruders. Kaimin slowed the hovercraft to a crawl, studying the mechanisms carefully. "These look old, but they're still functional," he observed, pointing to the faint hum of energy emanating from the turrets. "If we trigger them, we're done for." Yunsu nodded grimly. "Can you disable them?" Kaimin didn't answer immediately. Instead, he climbed out of the hovercraft and approached the nearest turret, examining its wiring. Using a small device from his toolkit, he hacked into the system and reprogrammed it to ignore their presence. One by one, he repeated the process until the path ahead was clear. By the time they reached the heart of the caverns, both Kaimin and Yunsu were exhausted. There, nestled among the crystals, was the rebel base, a sprawling network of tents and makeshift shelters surrounded by armed guards. As they stepped out of the hovercraft, a group of rebels emerged to greet them, their expressions wary but hopeful. "Welcome to the Resistance," said a woman with sharp features and piercing eyes. Her name was Hae Jin, and she introduced herself as the tactical leader of the rebels. Beside her stood Jun Hyuk, a grizzled veteran with a scar running down his cheek. Unlike Hye Jin, who seemed cautiously optimistic, Jun Hyuk regarded Kai Min with open suspicion. "What's your story?" Jun Hyuk demanded, crossing his arms. "Why should we trust you?" Before Kai Min could respond, Yun Su stepped forward. "He saved my life," she said firmly. "Without him, I wouldn't be here." Hye Jin studied Kai Min for a moment before nodding. "All right. Let's hear what you've brought us." Yun Su explained the situation, revealing that the dragon toy Kai Min had repaired earlier contained encrypted data detailing the location of Queen Myung-ae's superweapon, an orbital cannon capable of annihilating entire cities. The rebels believed that Kai Min held the key to deciphering the encryption, though he remained unaware of how he became involved. As the discussion unfolded, Kai Min felt a mix of emotions: confusion, disbelief, and a growing sense of responsibility. He hadn't asked for any of this, but now that he was here, he couldn't ignore the stakes. If the rebels succeeded, they could free Velora from the Queen's tyranny. If they failed, countless lives would be lost. That night, as Kai Min lay awake in a borrowed tent, he thought about everything that had happened. His quiet life as a mechanic felt like a distant memory now, replaced by danger and uncertainty. Yet, despite the risks, he found himself wondering if this was where he was meant to be all along. When morning came, Kai Min made his decision. He would stay and help the rebels, not because he wanted glory or recognition, but because it was the right thing to do. Little did he know this choice would lead him down a path far greater than he ever imagined. The next morning, Kai Min joined the rebels in their planning tent. Maps of the royal palace were spread out across a table, marked with red circles and lines showing guard posts, security systems, and escape routes. Hye Jin stood at the head of the table, her sharp eyes scanning the group as she outlined the mission. "Our goal is simple," she said firmly. "We infiltrate the palace, retrieve the encryption key from the dragon toy, and locate the real Princess Queen Myung-ae. She's being held captive by Zetherian, a parasitic AI that's been controlling her actions." Kai Min frowned. "You mean the Queen isn't the one giving orders? It's this thing?" Hye Jin nodded. "Zetherian has been manipulating events from the shadows. If we can free the Queen, we might have a chance to end its reign of terror." Jun Hyuk leaned forward, his voice gruff. "And what about him?" he asked, jerking his thumb toward Kai Min. "Does he even know how to fight?" Kai Min bristled but kept his tone calm. "I'm not here to fight. I'm here to fix things. If you need someone to disable traps or hack into systems, I'm your guy." Yun Su stepped in before Jun Hyuk could argue further. "He's already proven himself," she said firmly. "We wouldn't be here without him." After some heated discussion, the group agreed on a plan. Disguised as maintenance workers, Kai Min, Yun Su, and Jun Hyuk would enter the palace under the pretense of performing routine repairs. Once inside, they would split up. Yun Su would scout ahead, Jun Hyuk would provide cover, and Kai Min would focus on disabling security systems and retrieving the encryption key. The journey to the palace was tense. They traveled in a cargo shuttle disguised as a delivery vehicle, its compartments filled with tools and spare parts. As they approached the towering structure, Kai Min felt a knot form in his stomach. The palace loomed above them, its golden spires gleaming in the sunlight. Guards patrolled the perimeter, their weapons glinting ominously. When they landed, the trio stepped out, clad in plain work uniforms. A bored-looking officer waved them through after a cursory inspection of their papers. Inside, the palace was a maze of opulent halls and shimmering corridors. Servants bustled about, carrying trays of food and stacks of documents, while robotic sentries monitored every corner. Kai Min's first task was to disable a series of automated doors blocking their path. Using a handheld device, he tapped into the system and bypassed the locks. His hands moved quickly, his mind focused entirely on the task at hand. Behind him, Yun-Soo whispered updates into a communicator, guiding Jun-hyuk to potential threats. As they ventured deeper into the palace, Kai-min noticed something strange. The walls seemed alive, and pulsating faintly with an eerie blue light. He realized it was part of Zetherian's network, feeding information to the AI and maintaining control over the building. Every step they took felt like walking into the belly of a beast. Their luck held until they reached a chamber guarded by two heavily armed soldiers. Jun-hyuk signaled for them to wait while he distracted the guards with a clever ruse. Pretending to be lost, he wandered into view, drawing their attention away from the door. Seizing the opportunity, Kai-min slipped past and disabled the lock just as Yun-Soo darted inside. Inside the chamber, they found what they had come for: the dragon toy sitting on a pedestal, surrounded by holographic displays. Kai-min examined it closely, searching for the hidden compartment containing the encryption key. After a few moments, he located a tiny panel on the underside of the toy and pried it open. Inside was a small data chip glowing faintly. "We've got it," Yun-Soo whispered, her voice trembling with excitement. But their victory was short-lived. Alarms blared suddenly, echoing through the halls. Red lights flashed overhead as robotic guards descended upon them. Jun-hyuk burst into the room, firing wildly to hold them off. "Go!" he shouted. "I'll cover you!" Kai-min hesitated, torn between staying to help and completing the mission. Yun-Soo grabbed his arm and pulled him toward a hidden passage she had spotted earlier. "We have to move!" she urged. They ran through the narrow corridor, the sound of gunfire fading behind them. The passage led to a spiral staircase descending into darkness. At the bottom, they emerged into a vast underground chamber. In the center stood a glass pod containing the unconscious figure of Princess Queen Myung-ae. Surrounding her was a web of wires and cables connected to a massive machine humming with energy. "This is Zetherian's core," Yun-Soo said, her voice filled with awe and dread. "If we destroy it, we can free the queen." Kai-min studied the machine, his mind racing. Destroying the core would likely trigger a catastrophic failure, collapsing the entire palace. But if they didn't act, Zetherian would continue its reign of terror. There was no time to debate. They had to make a choice. "I'll do it," Kai-min said finally. "But you need to get the queen out of here." Yun-Soo shook her head. "I'm not leaving you." Before either of them could argue further, the ground trembled as Zetherian detected their presence. The machine began to shift, its metallic surface rippling like liquid. From it emerged a monstrous form, a biomechanical creature with glowing eyes and razor-sharp claws. "Go!" Kai-min yelled, shoving Yun-Soo toward the pod. "I'll hold it off." As Yun-Soo worked to free the queen, Kai-min faced the creature alone. Though terrified, he refused to back down. Grabbing a nearby tool, he hurled it at the creature, striking one of its sensors. Sparks flew as the machine staggered, giving him precious seconds to think. With each passing moment, Kai-min's resolve grew stronger. He wasn't a fighter, but he was determined to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. And in that moment, he realized he had become more than just a mechanic. He had become a hero. The biomechanical creature loomed over Kai-min, and its glowing eyes locking onto him like a predator sizing up its prey. Its claws clicked menacingly as it advanced, each step shaking the ground beneath them. Kai-min's heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. Panicking wouldn't help. He needed to think. Behind him, Yun-Soo worked frantically to free Princess Queen Myung-ae from the glass pod. The wires and cables surrounding the pod were complex, and every second felt like an eternity. "Hurry!" Kai-min shouted, dodging as the creature swung one of its massive arms at him. Kai-min grabbed a metal pipe lying nearby and used it to block another attack. Sparks flew as the creature's claws scraped against the makeshift weapon. Though he managed to hold his ground, Kaimin knew he couldn't keep this up forever. He had to find a way to outsmart the machine. Glancing around the chamber, he spotted a control panel on the far wall. It was connected to the core of Zytherian by thick bundles of cables. If he could reach it, he might be able to overload the system and disable the creature. But getting there would be nearly impossible with the beast blocking his path. Thinking quickly, Kaimin grabbed a piece of debris and hurled it toward the opposite side of the room. The noise caught the creature's attention, causing it to turn its head momentarily. Seizing the opportunity, Kaimin sprinted toward the control panel, weaving between fallen equipment and shattered glass. The creature roared in anger and lunged after him, its movement surprisingly fast for something so large. The Kaimin barely avoided being crushed as one of its claws slammed into the ground where he had been standing moments earlier. His breath came in ragged gasps, but he didn't stop. Reaching the control panel, he began typing furiously, trying to access the system. "Come on," he muttered under his breath, sweat dripping down his face. The interface was unfamiliar, but Kaimin's years of tinkering with machines gave him an edge. He located the command to overload the core and initiated the process. A warning flashed on the screen. Self-destruct sequence activated. 60 seconds remaining. Kaimin turned back toward Yunsu, who was still struggling with the pod. "We need to go!" he yelled. "Now!" "I'm almost done," she replied, her hands trembling as she disconnected the last few wires. With a hiss, the glass pod opened, revealing the unconscious figure of Princess Queen Myungai. Her face was pale, but she seemed unharmed. Yunsu gently shook her awake. The queen stirred, her eyes fluttering open. For a moment she looked confused, but then recognition dawned on her face. "Yunsu?" she whispered weakly. What happened?" "No time to explain," Yunsu said urgently. "We have to leave. Now." The three of them ran toward the exit, the countdown echoing ominously through the chamber. Behind them, the creature let out a deafening screech as its body began to destabilize. Chunks of metal and wiring fell from its frame, sparking violently. It lunged at them one last time, but Kaimin threw a wrench at its head, stunning it long enough for them to slip past. They reached the spiral staircase just as the self-destruct sequence entered its final seconds, and the ground shook violently and chunks of the ceiling began to collapse. Kaimin led the way, helping Unsu support the weakened queen as they climbed higher and higher. Dust filled the air, making it hard to breathe, but none of them slowed down. With only seconds to spare, they burst out of a hidden door and into the palace gardens. Behind them, the palace erupted in a fiery explosion, sending shock waves rippling through the air. They hit the ground, shielding their faces as debris rained down around them. When the chaos subsided, Kaimin sat up, coughing and covered in soot. Beside him, Yunsu and the queen were also catching their breath. The once majestic palace was now a smoldering ruin, its golden spires reduced to rubble. But despite the destruction, there was a sense of relief in the air. My Princess Queen Myungae looked at Kaimin, her expression filled with gratitude. "You saved me," she said softly. "I don't know how to thank you." Kaimin shrugged, brushing dirt off his clothes. "I didn't do it for thanks," he replied. "I just did what I thought was right." The queen smiled faintly, though her eyes still carried a hint of sadness. "Even so, your actions will not be forgotten. You've given my people hope, a chance to rebuild." As they regrouped with the other rebels waiting outside the palace, Kaimin felt a strange mix of emotions. He had never imagined himself in a situation like this, yet here he was, standing among heroes. Though he didn't seek recognition, he couldn't deny the pride swelling in his chest. Later that evening, as the rebels celebrated their victory, Kaimin found a quiet spot away from the festivities. Sitting on a low wall, he stared up at the stars, lost in thought. Yun-Su joined him after a while, sitting beside him in silence. "You've changed," she said finally, breaking the quiet. "You're not the same person who helped me escape that first night." Kai-min chuckled softly. "Maybe not, but I think I'm okay with that." Yun-Su smiled, her gaze softening. "You've done something incredible, Kai-min. Something most people wouldn't even dream of." He shook his head. "I'm just a mechanic. I fix things, that's all." "But sometimes fixing things is enough," Yun-Su said. "Sometimes it's more than enough." Kai-min didn't respond. Instead, he continued staring at the stars, thinking about everything that had happened. He had started this journey wanting nothing more than to return to his quiet life. But now, then he wasn't so sure if that was what he truly wanted anymore. For the first time in his life, Kai-min felt like he belonged somewhere, like he had made a difference. And though the road ahead was uncertain, he knew one thing for sure. He was ready to face whatever came next. The days that followed the destruction of the palace were a blur of activity. The rebels worked tirelessly to spread the news of Zetharian's defeat and Princess Queen Myung-Ae's liberation. Across Valora, people began to rise up against the remnants of the AI's influence, reclaiming their cities and towns from the shadow of tyranny. For the first time in years, there was hope in the air, a fragile but powerful spark of change. Kai-min, however, found himself struggling to adjust. After everything he had been through, returning to his quiet life as a mechanic felt wrong. In the workshop that had once been his sanctuary now seemed too small, too ordinary. Every time he picked up a wrench or stared at a broken machine, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was meant for something more. Princess Queen Myung-Ae had offered him a position as her personal engineer, promising him resources and opportunities beyond anything he could imagine. It was a tempting offer, but Kai-min declined. He didn't want fame or wealth. He just wanted to figure out where he belonged. Yun-Su noticed his restlessness and approached him one evening as he sat outside the rebel camp, gazing at the horizon. "You're thinking about leaving, aren't you?" she asked, sitting down beside him. Kai-min hesitated before nodding. "I can't stay here forever," he said quietly. "This isn't my fight anymore." Yun-Su frowned. "You make it sound like you were never part of it. But you were, Kai-min. You helped save us all." "I know," he replied, "but I'm not cut out for this kind of life. I'm not a leader or a fighter. I'm just a guy who fixes things." "That's not true," Yun-Su said firmly. "You may not see it, but you've changed. You've become someone who inspires others, someone they look up to." Kai-min sighed, unsure how to respond. He appreciated Yun-Su's words, but deep down, he still doubted himself. What could he possibly offer to a galaxy on the brink of rebuilding? Before either of them could say more, Hyejin approached, her expression serious. "We need to talk," she said, motioning for them to follow her. They walked to a nearby tent where Jun Hyuk and several other rebels were gathered around a holographic map of Valora. "We've received reports of unrest in the outer colonies," Hyejin explained. "Zetharian's influence is gone, but the power vacuum has created chaos. Some factions are trying to take control, and we need to stop them before they cause more harm." Kai-min listened silently, his mind racing. He knew what was coming next. Hyejin would ask him to join the mission, and though part of him wanted to refuse, another part felt a pull he couldn't ignore. "You don't have to come," Yun-Su said softly, sensing his hesitation. "No one will blame you if you decide to leave." Kai-min shook his head. "If I don't help now, when will I? This galaxy gave me a second chance. I owe it something in return." The group set out the next morning, traveling to the outer colonies aboard a sleek starship provided by the Queen. Along the way, Kai-min spent hours tinkering with the ship's systems, making improvements and repairs. It was familiar work, and it brought him a sense of comfort. Yet, he couldn't help but notice the admiration in the eyes of the crew whenever they watched him work. They saw him as a hero, even if he didn't see himself that way. When they arrived at the first colony, they discovered a tense standoff between rival factions. Armed guards patrolled the streets, and frightened civilians huddled in their homes. The rebels stepped in, negotiating peace and restoring order. Kai Min played a crucial role, using his skills to disable weapons caches and repair damaged infrastructure. Slowly but surely, the colony began to heal. As they moved from one location to the next, Kai Min realized that his presence made a difference, not because he was extraordinary, but because he cared. He listened to people's stories, shared their struggles, and worked alongside them to rebuild what had been lost. In doing so, he inspired others to do the same. Eventually, the missions came to an end, and the team prepared to return to Valora. On the final night before departure, Princess Queen Myung-A visited the camp to personally thank the rebels for their efforts. When she reached Kai Min, she paused, studying him with a thoughtful expression. "You've done more than anyone could have asked of you," she said, "and yet you refuse any reward. Why?" Kai Min shrugged. "Because I didn't do it for rewards. I did it because it was the right thing to do." The queen smiled faintly. "Even so, your actions will be remembered. You've shown us that even the smallest acts of kindness can create ripples of change." Kai Min didn't know how to respond, so he simply nodded. As the queen walked away, Yunsu joined him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "She's right, you know," she said. "You've made a difference, Kai Min. A big one." The next day, as the starship descended back toward Valora, Kai Min felt a sense of closure. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew he was ready to face it. Whether he returned to his workshop or continued helping others, he understood that his journey wasn't defined by titles or rewards. It was defined by the choices he made and the lives he touched. When they landed, Kai Min bid farewell to the rebels, promising to stay in touch. Then, with nothing but his tools and a newfound sense of purpose, he set off toward his workshop. Then as he walked, he thought about everything he had experienced. The danger, the friendships, the moments of triumph and doubt. Reaching the workshop, he unlocked the door and stepped inside. The familiar scent of oil and metal greeted him, bringing a smile to his face. For now, this was home. But as he began working on a new project, an invention inspired by the lessons he'd learned during his adventure, he allowed himself to dream of what might come next. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges and opportunities waiting to be discovered. And though Kai Min never asked for reward or recognition, he knew one thing for certain: wherever he went, he would carry the spirit of hope and resilience with him. Because sometimes the greatest heroes are those who never seek glory. They simply do what needs to be done.